What's going on, guys, and welcome back to another episode of the German Bear Podcast. And today we want to talk about one of the most underrated free agency acquisitions of the Chicago Bears in the 2025 NFL offseason. Let's talk about wide receiver Olamide Zaccheaus. And I know, guys, I'm a little bit late to the free agency talk and overall to the Chicago Bears offseason talk. I didn't even talk about Ben Johnson officially becoming the Chicago Bears head coach. But as I said before, I still had to take a little bit of a break in order to get all things figured out for my studies. I just didn't have that much time for videos and YouTube overall. But now I am back. And today we're starting off with a great episode, in my opinion, talking about Olamide Zaccheaus, a very intriguing offseason acquisition by the Chicago Bears. And we're going to dig deep into his all-22 and let's just see what he offers to the Chicago Bears overall. So I'm glad to be back. There's going to be a lot of content this week about the NFL draft, the Chicago Bears analyzing the picks. Then I'm also working on a mock draft 1.0, at least get one mock draft out this offseason. So I'm back, so let's get right into this and talk about Olamide Zaccheaus. Really excited about this free agency pickup. But before we actually want to start and get into the nitty-gritty details of him in the film room and talk about what he can offer to the Bears, let's look at a contract that he signed with the Chicago Bears. He signed a one-year, $1.5 million deal with $750,000 guaranteed in that signed contract. Now, I think for me, first of all, we'll talk about it in the conclusion if it's worth that much money, but I can tell you right away, it's definitely worth the money. Now, for the stats that he had last year in 2024, he was playing for the Washington Commanders under rookie quarterback Jayden Daniels. He had 45 receptions overall throughout the year, 506 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 26 first downs on those 45 receptions, which equals about a 58% first down rate on his catches that he had in 2024. And that just perfectly concludes what I saw on tape, because it felt like every time Olamide Zaccheaus caught the football, he was getting a first down, which was so much fun to see and also very surprising. So that stat definitely backed that up. And he also, according to PFF, had 6 drops throughout the entire season, including the playoff run of the Commanders. Now, to put this into perspective for you guys, he was the second in wide receiver receptions, yards, and touchdowns for the Commanders. Number 2 for those statistics for the overall receivers on the roster was Zach Ertz. But if we're talking true wideouts, Olamide Zaccheaus was the second most productive wide receiver after Terry McLaurin on the Commanders. And with that being said, let's actually move on and get into the nitty-gritty details of Olamide Zaccheaus and what he brings to the Chicago Bears offense, how he fits into Ben Johnson's system and how he can use him in multiple ways, and how he's going to help second-year quarterback Caleb Williams in his development of becoming a better player. So let's get it started and talk about him in the All-22 film room. All right, now in the film room, let's talk about Olamide Zaccheaus and what he offers as a football player to the Chicago Bears in 2025. And before I want to talk about anything, I just want to say I had so much fun being back, making a video and watching tape, but also especially Olamide Zaccheaus made it a very fun film room to look at and just a tape study that I was going after. I mean, such a fun player, as you'll see today. And it starts out with the first very important point that I want to mention with him, which is the yards after the catch, his yak ability. And I think one thing you want with Olamide Zaccheaus, aside from the route running and catching that we'll talk about today later on in the film room, we'll talk about the yak ability. You want him to get the football in his hands because he can make some stuff happen, man. It was so many times on tape where he caught a football and got a first down after he caught it 5 yards, 4 yards before the first down marker. He still got there with making a guy miss, trucking a guy, or just being faster than his opponents, or rather quicker than his opponents, I should say. And while I am talking about all those things that he can make after he actually catches the football, it kind of incorporates in combination with another point I want to make about him that's very positive, and it is his versatility. I mean, there's so many ways the Commanders gave him the football, and if the blocks are solid, he will turn on the jets and get some extra yards, I promise you that. But the way he caught the football was either on screens as a Z receiver, as the off guy, not on the ball, catching a screen with some guys in front of him, and he made extra yards almost every single time if there was at least one solid block being laid, which is obviously the key component to a screen to work out, but he still made an occasional guy miss all the time, and he was the screen guy for the Washington Commanders. But also on quick slants, out routes where he was given the opportunity with off coverage to make something happen after he caught the football. Plus, one very intriguing thing for me is he was also lined up in the slot, out wide to get yak and run routes, but he was also in the backfield as a player being motioned a lot. He was their primary motion guy too in Washington for that offense, but a lot of time he was also lined up in the backfield as a threat. There was one cool play where he was chip releasing for a check down and then made additional yards happen and almost got a first down and made them a fourth and manageable within field goal range. So that was something I definitely wanted to mention. And if we want to look at one play specifically against the Baltimore Ravens that I really liked, it's a great example of him running a good route and getting stuff happen after the catch. Now on this play, we see him lined up on the single side as a Z receiver off the line against a bailing off coverage corner that is actually trying to keep things in front of him and tries to prevent stuff from happening deep and doesn't want to get burned. So he keeps the playing field in front of him, that corner, and wants Olamide Zaccheaus to break down. So what is very important here from a receiver perspective, if we want to break down that route, first of all, when we start off on that 8-yard curl, he threatens the DB with good speed out of his stance, so he really just explodes off the line, indicating that he's having a very vertical trending route right here. And then when he's at the top of the break, at his break point of his route, he has a sudden hip drop, decelerates within 3 steps, and then he secures the football first of all, works back to it, and aggressively catches that football. So that's a great route example of his route running against a off coverage corner with a 8-yard curl before the sticks. And then what he does is he secures that catch and then turns on the jets and works upfield immediately and makes the DB miss for a first down. Great rep from Olamide Zaccheaus right here. That's what I loved so much about him, and just a great example of him being a good route runner, which we'll talk about next, but also of him being a guy that can get some yards after the catch right here. And as I just mentioned, let's move on to the route running, which is obviously very important for a wide receiver in any type of level of football. And one thing to add, Olamide Zaccheaus, with his versatility, he's 5'8". He can still play outside and inside and run basically the entire route tree. We saw him running dig routes, out routes, posts, go routes, quick screens, slants, everything. So he basically runs the entire route tree, which is something to mention with route running and in combination with his size right here. Even though he's a little bit smaller, he was not really limited. They didn't play him as an X receiver, but that's not what we need him for. We got Rome Odunze, we got DJ Moore. He can play off or in the slot or in the backfield, which is a huge, big plus point with him being so versatile. But for his route running, overall, I really liked his tape as a route runner. Really quick off the line, as I already mentioned. Good hands, and with that, I don't mean necessarily catching. I'm talking about the release point and working his hands early against an aggressive press corner. He understands and utilizes leverage of the opponent really well, and he has great feet to attack. And we'll talk about that with a couple of examples. One with an actual motion out of the backfield to a empty set right here, as we will create a mismatch against a linebacker in a cover 4 look for that defense right here. So we're motioning into an empty look, and he's playing against a linebacker who's about to protect the flats, but he still wants to get his hands on Olamide Zaccheaus to reroute him. So it basically is a one-on-one for a couple of steps right here. And what I love about this example against the Arizona Cardinals is that he first of all takes an outside stem onto the linebacker. And what that does is it creates space towards the inside to work into for Olamide Zaccheaus, and it makes that linebacker uncomfortable, but because that guy that was now easy to push inside actually threatens me vertically, and I don't know where he's about to go. And how he does that even more threatening that linebacker is by him squaring him up with a square base and square upper body, and then he attacks him vertical with a jab step outside of his frame and then cuts back inside with great quickness that he possesses, and then gets a first down with, in my opinion, a perfectly ran route. So overall from the Commanders here, great execution, putting a good receiver in a great spot against a linebacker, which is obviously a big mismatch, and he got him to open his hips with attacking outside the frame and getting open on that slant route. So that to me was a great example of why he's a good route runner. And then another one, a route that he really excelled at, was a stop and go curl route. He did that in multiple games, so we saw that route from him a couple of times. And here, just on a stop and go curl, it's basically like you're selling a stop and go. So you're selling a curl to go to curl again on a stop and go curl. That's for me the easiest way to describe it. And it's really important to have great acceleration, threatening him deep, selling that stop route. So you need to decelerate, then accelerate again, and decelerate again. So you need to accelerate and decelerate twice, right? And that's all about weight transfer, hip drop, and breaking down within 3 steps. And Olamide Zaccheaus does all of that perfectly here and has a great rep working back to the football and attacking that ball and hauling that in for a first down. And like I said, a route that he really mastered and was fun to watch on tape. Now, what we want to focus on within this segment, zone segment, I want to look at his tape against zone coverage, and he just really did what he was asked for, which is all you can actually ask for in the NFL, finding the green and working well against zone and making the right read decisions right here. He had a couple of reps, for example, against the New Orleans Saints in a spacing concept with a flat defender read for the quarterback. So we're basically reading that linebacker. If he shoots down to the flats with the running back, we're hitting Olamide Zaccheaus. If it's the other way around, we're hitting the running back. And Olamide found the soft spot right here on his hitch against the cover 4 flat defender and middle defender, settled right down in between the zone and found the green space in the middle there and got some yards after the catch again, of course, on top of that. So that was one great rep right here. But overall, I felt like watching his tape, he understood where he needs to be and really was a quarterback-friendly player in that aspect. And then lastly, we want to move on to one more category, just clicking off zone right here real quick. Let's talk about his catching. And the catching aspect, it's something always very interesting with wide receivers. How much is actually on the quarterback, how much is on the receiver, and who is to blame. But with Olamide Zaccheaus, it was an up and down watch. As I mentioned earlier, he had 6 drops throughout the entire season. Now, this is not too much, I would say, but it's still 6 drops too many that could have been avoided. And there is definitely drops on tape that were pretty bad, where he was wide open and was just dropping a football. But he made up for it a couple of times with also some really good catches in traffic. So overall for his catching, I think it's a little bit up and down. He overall had 72 targets and 6 drops. That's about 8% of his targets were actually drops. So that's a number that I wish would be a little bit lower. But at the end of the day, he didn't really drop the ball too much, and those were drops that were, in my opinion, discussable. There were a couple where he really dropped the football and just didn't focus and haul it in with his hands. And then there's other times where it was a little bit of a tougher catch, and I would say it's both between quarterback and receiver, both at fault with the same percentage right there. So overall, catching is solid. It's not the best though, but I will trust him to make good plays for the Chicago Bears in 2025. And with that being said, let's talk about the conclusion. Let's talk about what Olamide Zaccheaus actually offers to the Chicago Bears. And to me, the big points are yak ability. He can get stuff done after he catches the football. He can be used in multiple ways. Very versatile player in the backfield, in the slot, out wide. He can be lined up in multiple positions and help out the Chicago Bears. Route running. Very experienced NFL wide receiver that knows how to get open, understands leverage, and has great elite quickness, not speed. His top end speed might not be the best, but great spatial quickness to work against any type of a DB. So I'm really excited what he offers as a route runner. And lastly, he is smart. He understands zones, he understands leverages, and knows how to get open against man or zone coverage. So that's another big point. And all of that for $1.5 million as a wide receiver 3/4. I would take that any day of the week. To me, it's a bargain deal. It's not playing it cheap. It's playing it smart and spending your money with into smart assets that can provide great additional strength to the Chicago Bears roster. And if he's the wide receiver 3 or 4 moving into 2025, I'm going to be more than comfortable going into the year like that, because he's really showed last year with the Commanders that he can be that type of a guy on a roster any day of the week. And with being the third in most of the receiving categories for the Commanders, I think he could definitely do the same with the Chicago Bears. And we already have great talent with DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, and Cole Kmet. So adding Olamide Zaccheaus is a great weapon that Ben Johnson can use in multiple ways within the wideout spread-based offense, but also within the backfield. So really excited what Olamide Zaccheaus is going to actually bring to the field for the Bears in 2025. And with that being said, guys, that's the end of today's episode. I really hope you've enjoyed it. It was so much fun making it. Definitely let me know in the comments down below what you think of Olamide Zaccheaus and how did you see his tape in today's Film Room episode. Like and subscribe if you liked the video. Check out Instagram and Twitter if you want to as well. And as always, guys, bear down.